Okay, so let me know once you're able to see the screen.
Yep, I can see the screen.
Okay. Mm. So yesterday we discussed about what is cloud computing, how
Yeah.
it benefits businesses, what are its overview, and what services differences it have. Now, moving ahead, see, cloud computing is basically a concept. Now, to roll out that concept, there are multiple players in the market, such as Microsoft Azure, AWS, Google Cloud. Those are
Yep.
called cloud service providers. Those cloud service providers basically establish infrastructure in their backend where people can basically go ahead, log into their account, and launch the services like either VMs, any web application, storage devices, anything they want. And in exchange, they pay for it for their usage. Now, this way, there are multiple players in the market like Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud. Although,
Yeah.
apart from these three main players, there are other players as well, such as Alibaba Cloud. Then you have IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud. You also have an OpenShift private clouds as well.
Okay.
So, we'll be discussing about Microsoft Azure. It is formerly known as Windows Azure, and it's basically a public cloud computing platform. It actually provides a range of services which include compute, analytics, storage, and networking. Now, if you see here, there is a list of services which I have added here. Now, these are not only services which are being offered by Azure, but these are mostly
M-
popular
Main.
services
Yeah.
which are being used by enterprises people on a daily basis. Now, if you see here, under infra, there are services such as single virtual machine. Then you have virtual machine scale set, you have app services, you have virtual network, you have express route, you have CDN networks, you have load balancers, you have functions, you have batches, you have
Mhm.
application gateways. The same way under analytics, you have stream analytics, which is basically now these days are called synapses as your synapses. You
Yeah.
also have machine learning algorithms, you have HD insights, you have data lake analytics, you have data catalogs, you have bot services. And the same way, if you see here under databases, it has Azure database, it warehouse as well. It also have Azure Cosmo DBs. It has Azure Cache, which is also called Redis Cache. And then it also have database factory.
Mm.
Now, if you see, there are these five types which are basically core services here. But all these services, along with mobile analytics, application database, or infra, they also use these security services such as Security Center, Active Directory, multi-factor authentication, Key Vault, domain services, business to client services, any rights management. The same
Okay.
way, there are DevOps services which are also being used by all these services, such as container registry, app insights, logs, automations, Azure portal, any team services by Visual Studio, or any dev test labs. Now, if you move to Azure portal here, if you see, you have to go to portal.azure.com.
Yeah.
Once you logged in, this is the home page. Now, if you go to the top left corner here, you see
Mm.
there is an option of all services. Now, if you see here, how many services it have, under general, it has 18, then compute, it has 28, networking, it has 34, storage, it has 15 services, web, 16 services. Now, if you see, the list is quite long here.
Mm. Yeah.
So now, if you also might have noticed that there are few services which doesn't have any tag with them, like it doesn't have. On the other hand, there is service called preview. What does it mean? So it means that this particular service is not actually fully launched. It is under preview. People cannot directly use these services under production environment because they will not guarantee anyone to be it 100% safe. There could be bugs, there could be issues with this service. So unless it is generally available to all of client around the world, they mark a tag called preview with that service.
Mm.
Okay.
So, sorry. So any services that are there that has a preview tag, that means it can't be used for production. It just is just it's not ready yet, basically. That makes
Yeah, it
sense.
is not ready. The reason
Okay.
it is still under development. The
Okay, that's
reason
fine.
they put it on preview so that people can use it, and in case they face any errors, any issues, any concerns, they can again reach out to Azure support team telling them that this is the error they face so that they can improve their product. It is same way you might have heard about iOS beta, any
Yeah, beta. Yeah,
beta
yeah, betas
software.
in general.
Yeah,
Yeah.
public,
Amazing.
then developers. So initially these services are for some certain set of people for some certain regions and then they make these services publicly beta, publicly preview, so that people from different span of enterprises can use it. And once everything is stable, there are no errors, there are no concerns, then they actually launch it, which is called availability to general
What
availability.
general availability, you say?
Yeah,
Okay. So with this one, it says preview. So do you know when it's on preview, can you are organizations able to use it?
yeah,
That
they
makes
can
sense.
use it. For example, if you see here, let's take a service, let's say uh, some just a minute. Let's say this is a service. Okay,
Okay.
now if you see here, I can able to configure it as per my requirement. For example, I can enable on any virtual machine and I can do it, but generally they don't recommend it to use on production services. For
So how
example,
how would company use it if it's not for production? How else would they use it?
see, every development has some methods. Let
Okay.
me show you. If you see here, for example, if you want to create a new website. Okay, so what is the best practices of a website, software development model or any product development model? The best practices before going to production, you should
Oh, you
have
do
a dev environment.
test environment like a dev. I
Yeah,
know what you mean.
dev environment. Then
Yeah.
you should have a sit environment, or you can say a load test environment.
Okay.
And then you have this production environment finalize. Dev environment is environment for developers. So whatever they are building, let's say they are building any new font, they are building any new technology, they could deploy on dev and basically test it for their own purpose, whether what they are intent to do is basically fully fulfilling that function. Now let assume everything is as per their expectation, as per the client requirement. They will push that changes from dev to sit environment or load or testing environment. Now this testing environment is used for load testing, functional testing, and all sort of testing by testers, specialized testers. They will load test this website by putting load for 10,000 people through softwares. They will try to load and use that website, use the functionality, see everything is working fine, whether data is loading correctly or not. So these kind of things. And
Yeah.
once everything is finished, it get approved. If there are any bug fixes, they will reach out to them. And once it is basically done, then only it get moved to production. So production is very stable environment. You can't move rapid changes on production unless it is tested and approved by tester and program managers.
Okay.
So that's the reason these services like preview services, if you have 10 services here, okay, as per as your recommendation, they will not ask you to use these services with these production system. They want you to use these services with your dev, with your test or set kind of environment.
Okay.
Those environment where you don't have any live users.
Yeah.
So that due to this service, if something happens, something breaks down, it will not impact your application. So that's the best practices suggested by Azure.
Okay, that's fine.
So if you see here, let me show you. A service is like Azure service, for example. Okay, this service is being developed by Azure. First of all, it being tested inside their Azure environment. Okay,
Yeah.
once it is accessed and being tested inside their Azure environment, they release it. They don't directly release it to wide public. For example, this is a public domain. First of all, they make it available for certain group which are developer of Azure, like Microsoft certified professionals, like Azure developers, like Azure specialized architect. They will
Okay.
make this service available for them. They will use this service. They will say this is the issue with the service, or they require some additional functionality to it. They will make changes accordingly. And once they got 100% approval from them, then
They're released.
they release it as a preview to
Yeah.
public. And
Okay.
once public have issues, concerns, and they reach back to them with, and then once it is 100% done, then it will release the full final version
They
to
removed the preview. Yeah.
yeah actual purple. Now
Okay.
this there could be a question around here, that how would a preview service could be used. You will get an option that it could be directly deploy on production. It could be directly not deploy on production. It should be tested and thoroughly examined first. So these kind of question could have arise from here.
Yeah. That makes sense. Thank you.
So that's how a preview service work. Now if you see, all the services which are being offered by Azure has been gone through these processes.
Mm.
Even that is a virtual machine, even that is a storage account, at one point they must have traveled through these particular process so
Okay.
that they get available to general availability. It is called GA.
Okay.
Okay,
What point is it general availability? Is it when it's in preview or is it
it
past
is
preview?
a past preview
Okay, that's fine.
for
So
general public.
yeah, that's fine. So just to cover the points, so they have like an so Azure of course create an application or something,
Yeah,
and then after that they release it to of course the Azure developers and the architects. They of course do their testing and all that stuff, and when they and if they approve it, they release it to as a preview, if that makes sense.
yeah,
And then companies will start using it in their own dev environment, their own test
yeah,
dev environment.
yeah,
And then if they have issues, they go back and then they tweak it to a point where they approve 100%, and they release it as general public and they remove the preview, if that makes sense.
yeah, that's it.
Okay, okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
So this is how a service life cycle is.
Is there a name for this life cycle? Is this a DevOps cycle or something? What's the name for
So
this?
DevOps cycle is different. DevOps cycle is basically a kind of a cycle where you develop an application inside organization
Oh
for
yeah, okay,
internal use. This is a kind of a service life cycle. It doesn't
okay,
have any name, but they provide this as a functionality to people, so that
okay,
before actually producing a product, they want input from general people as well. So that's the
okay.
benefit. For example, let's say as take an example, they want to launch a vehicle. Okay, let's say a company want to launch a vehicle.
Yeah,
They will test its speed and everything with certain drivers and certain industry expert. Once they
yeah,
give a go ahead, they will ask that particular vehicle, they will send 1,000 vehicles for that, and they say to people, come buy this from us and use it. We will give you in discounts. People will start using it, and they figure it out that it's overheating. It's battery get very easily drained. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to charge, and
Yeah.
with these problems, their research and development or production department, they will start working on these problem one by one,
Yeah.
and after resolving all these issue, they will finally launch a better product
Yeah.
which can be easily accepted in the market and will have very less flaws. So
Yeah.
this way, their vehicle or their electric vehicle will have more success rate as compared to their original version.
Of course.
That's the reason you might have noticed that iOS generally came as 15.1, then 2, then 3,
Yeah.
then 4. So these are called versioning upgrade. But because that is a software which is being used by a device,
Yeah.
but here you can't change your production environment for all single updates as such, because it
Yeah.
will put your production to down, because if you are upgrading something, your production could be down. So that's way they use these kind of tactics to expand their services.
Okay. That makes sense.
Now if you see here, under all services, it has many services. If you see, there are almost 300-400 services which are being currently live by Azure. As an Azure administrator, as an Azure fundamentalist or a cloud fundamental, you don't have to be worry about all these services, because as an administrator, you are only aware should be only aware about these services mainly, how these services are, what are their functions. Because apart from these services, if you see, let me just go to these services. Let's say I go to Internet of Things. You don't have to worry about these services. For example, IoT Hub, then device provisioning services, then machine learning studio, then time series application, because these services are not part of your original curriculum. It has a different learning path, and it will come under exam of different person. So if you see here, under the services, it will only ask you about these services: simple compute types like container instances, virtual machines, and functions, then
Okay.
VMs, scale set,
Okay.
desktop, then resource required, hosting options, web apps, virtual machine, containers,
Yep.
then virtual networks, DNS, VPN gateways, express route, public and private endpoints, then storage and access and security. So if you see, it only cover 3 or 4 types of services here.
Mm.
But in categories, if you see, it has lots of category.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't have to make sure that everything is being studied together, because in Azure they have multiple path, learning path, role based path. For example, if you want to pursue a career in development operations, they will ask you should have aware about DevOps environment, you should
Mm.
have aware about DevOps, you should be aware how to do CI/CD pipelines and all. Now in case if you want to go with AI related things, they will ask you should have you know uh, knowledge about all these kind of services like cognitive search, then recognition, custom vision, computer vision, content moderators, applied AI services, cognitive services, synapses analytics. So as of now, you don't have to
Yeah.
basically go through all these services all together. It all depends on how
The
you
path.
are actually moving ahead with your role inside Azure.
Yeah.
Now if you see here, let me just Just open a kind of whiteboard.
Are you trying to draw?
Yeah, yeah, I'm just
You
opening.
could do paint if you want.
Yeah, paint is fine. Just need to open this whiteboard as well. Earlier it was there. Not sure. Okay, let's do it. Now, if let me tell you what is actual hierarchy of Azure.
Is that in the curriculum?
Yeah,
Okay.
you should be. It will be very good to know.
Yeah.
Mm, okay. So now, if you see here, on top of you have an Azure account. Okay. So,
You can do text if you want. Yeah.
yeah, you have an Azure account. Okay.
Yeah.
Under that Azure account, you have subscription.
Subscription one. Okay.
You can have multiple subscription
Hmm. Okay.
under same account. Okay. Now under Azure account, it's being linked with subscription. Okay. Now all these subscription can be grouped together. For example, I want these to I want these two
Yes, subscriptions. Yeah.
into, let's say these two, I
Yeah.
want these them to be under a management group.
Okay.
Okay.
So, sorry to interrupt. So, subscriptions means like if you have three subscriptions, that means you have subscribed to three different Azure services. If that makes sense.
No, three different accounts. I will explain you everything.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Hmm, just a minute. So now if you see here, you can basically, group together these subscription in management groups. Okay.
Okay.
In that management groups, you can club together two services or one services as per your need. After these services, there comes resource group. These are called,
Source groups.
these four are resource group.
Okay.
Now, if you see here, this subscription one has two resource group. Okay.
Okay.
And this subscription has one resource group, third subscription, one resource group.
Okay.
Now, in this resource group, you could actually have resources. Okay.
Okay. You could just highlight, copy, paste if you want. Save some time.
No, it will.
Oh,
So
yeah,
now
it's
if you
fine.
see, these are all resources.
Yeah.
Now if you see, this resource group has
Can have
this
multiple
particular,
resources.
then
Okay.
it will have this will have this will have this. Now imagine this is a simple VM. Okay, this is a storage account. This is a VNet. Okay, and this is a firewall.
Mm,
I'm just giving an example. Now, if you see here how actually Azure works, if you see just bottom line, you have resources. Okay,
those are the services that you were showing earlier, basically.
yeah, the services, whatever services are the services provided by the Azure, but resources are the resources which are being used and deployed by us. For example, let me show you here. Let's say we these are called services. Okay,
Okay.
now let's say I this is storage account. This is called service. Okay, now
Okay.
as soon as I click on create,
Oh, as a resource. Okay.
it will as once it get created. Let's say I enter the resource name, any resource name. Okay, and
Okay.
just make sure it get corrected.
Quick question. Do you know when you
Mhm.
create a resource, you create it for free until you start using it, you guys start getting charged. Is that how it works?
Yeah, every other resource have different cost associated with it.
Yeah, of
I'll
course, of
just
course.
so now if you see here, we have deployed a service. As soon as it get deployed, it will become a resource. Now if you see, I go to a resource group here under
Uh,
demo rg. So this is a resource now. See,
yeah.
that service become a resource here.
Okay.
So these are resource. Now at the bottom line you have resources. Those resources are part of logical group called resource groups.
Okay.
Okay, now if you see here, let me just refresh it here. See, that storage account is now a resource.
Yeah.
It every resource is associated with the location where
Yeah.
it actually being deployed, like East US, West US, centralized US, or whatever location it is, and its type, what type of resource it is, whether it's SQL Server, it's a storage account, or whether
Okay.
it's a simple uh, VNet.
Okay.
Now, all these resources, each resources should be a part of resource group
Okay.
so that they can be logically grouped together. Now, if you see here, our resource group name is demo rg. Okay,
Okay.
under this demo rg, we have two resources.
Okay.
The same way in lab nf, there is one another
Environment.
resource group.
Yeah.
We have only single lab plan.
Okay.
So if you see, resource groups are these things.
Okay. I was gonna
Mm,
say, do you
mhm.
create your own resource group? So do
Yeah,
you,
resource group need to be created by us only.
by you only? But do you know the resources within the resource group? Can you have any random resource, or does it have to be logically
No, no.
similar? If that makes sense.
You can enter, for example, if you see here, resource group is only logical grouping. You can have any type of group here. You can have SQL
Okay.
Server, storage accounts, anything you
So
want.
so logical grouping. What do you mean by logical grouping?
Let's say, uh, just a minute. Let's say you have three departments. Okay,
Okay.
that is sales, that is production, and that is training and HR.
Mm,
Okay.
mm,
Now let's say you have three departments and your organization is moving to cloud.
yeah.
Now on before cloud, you have eight servers being used by these three departments. Okay,
Before cloud. Yeah. Okay.
before
On
cloud
premise.
on premises.
Yeah.
Now to streamline the cost, to basically use the best practices, you have to make sure that sales could be only assigned with two servers, production should be assigned with 4 servers.
Yeah, and training HR2.
Training will be 2.
Okay.
Now you have assigned them. Okay.
Yeah.
Now if you come to Azure portal, one thing you can do is you create a single resource group called, let's say I create a new resource group. I just simply create a resource group name, company name. Okay. And as soon as I create it and then launch all 8 servers in the same resource group. That is one
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah.
But using this approach is not feasible and not recommended by Azure. They want you to use different resource group for each. Let's say
Okay.
sales resource group.
Logical. Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. You have
Yeah.
sales RG.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
You have production RG.
Yeah.
Okay. So now if you see what you have done here is you logically group them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean now. Makes sense.
So what are the
Yeah.
benefits of logical
Logical group would be benefit would be
mm,
more intuitive, if that makes sense. Easy to understand.
see, the first thing is easy to understand. That's perfectly correct. Another thing is if you want to know the actual amount is being spent on production only,
Oh, you can see.
you
Okay.
can see that, you can filter that using
And you can
resource group.
improve it.
Yeah, you can improve it. If you want
Okay.
to see actual utilization in terms of sales, you can see that. And let's say
Okay.
if you want to, move, delete, copy something from one department, let's say your training and HR department has been, expanding. Okay. Now, rather than you add those servers here and here, you simply put a new server, your resource group, you can put it here. And then you will know how much it is actually increase the cost.
Okay.
So this way, you can do lots of thing, multiple combination and permutation you can do from these logical grouping. Apart
Okay.
from that, it will also be easy you to understand because as soon as you launch a product, so there are some standalone product like you know this load balancer, this database, or simple uh, you can say storage account. But products such as virtual machine or app service, it comes with lots of dependencies. Let me show you something. I will, let's say I create a new let's go ahead and launch a virtual machine first.
Hmm.
Show you something. Let's use production RG. Then I will give you the production VM1. Okay,
Hmm.
I'll just make sure. Yes. Let it run the validation. Do you have a portal, Azure portal account?
I think a moderator setting up. Moderator, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
And I think the moderator is also in here. Can you see in the chat?
Yes, what I will do is I will pass you some information later so
Okay,
you
that's fine.
can have access to your Azure portal, hopefully.
Yeah, because I want to play around with it, see what's going on. Thank you anyway.
Yeah. So now if you see here, we have basically, you know, initiated the virtual machine. I will show you something. As soon as it get deployed,
Mm.
let it deploy.
So as you said, virtual machines have, of course, a lot of dependencies. Did you say compared to other services?
Yeah, there are many services which are independent and doesn't create a resource in their backend. But if you see here, we have created a virtual machine. Okay.
Okay.
Now, if you see the resources it is creating a VNet, created an IP address, it created an NSG. So
Ah, but they're
it
all
created,
under virtual machine. Okay, I know what you mean.
then it start creating a virtual machine. It will create a disk as well. So now if I go to, you know, that resource, let's go to resource group, go to our production resource group. Now if you see here, we have only, you know, requested for a single resource,
Virtual
correct?
VM, yeah, as just a virtual machine. Yep.
But now if you see here, we have been given so many resources.
Mm,
Okay. So this way, if you know your, if see now there are 7 resources.
yeah,
Now imagine if you have, you know, no logical grouping and you basically required to troubleshoot a single thing. How will you
yeah,
identify the IP address of that virtual machine? How will you identify the SSH key of that virtual machine?
yeah,
So this way you can drill down your products, your resources very much easily.
yeah,
See, the disk is been given name as product VM1, disk 1. So it will automatically get the name as per the virtual machine. So this
yeah.
way you have basically, you know, enable the logical grouping.
Okay.
Okay, let me delete it. Otherwise, it will start costing. Okay, now it has been deleted.
Hmm.
Okay, now if you see here the Microsoft Azure, this is the homepage of portal.azure.com. So we
Mm,
were here. Oh, just a minute. Here. So now these are resource groups where all these resources are grouped together. Okay.
mm,
Now all these resource groups are part of some subscription. So what is subscription basically? Subscription is an account where your bill will happen. For example, if you see here, I have taken one subscription. Okay.
mm,
That subscription must have a payment method. If you see here, I have a payment method added here.
yeah.
So if you see whatever cost associated with my resource groups under this subscription, I
Mm.
will be charged here.
Okay.
Okay. So this way
So
you
yeah,
Hmm.
carry on, carry on.
So this way you can also make sure, for example, in this we have taken separate resource group for each sales, production and training, but they comes under single subscription.
Yeah,
But if you have very large number of departments, you can also take, you know, subscription. Each department have separate subscription. For example, subscription sales,
mm.
subscription production,
Okay. Subscription
subscription
training.
training,
Okay,
and you allocate budget to them, predefined budget, and they have to, you know, manage everything in that budget. So this way
okay.
you can also you know, rather than sharing with a single
Subscription.
subscription, you can choose to have different subscription under same account. Now if you see here, I have only single subscription. Let me show you the subscription here. I can add more subscription here as well.
Hmm.
I'll show you. I can add pay as you go. I can add, any other offer if I have, like any sponsorship, any enterprise, anyone. But these are limited subscription. If you want to go ahead as in a, enterprise level, you should always select pay as you go model.
Enterprise. Okay.
So you can take as many as service subscription you want. And how these subscription get assigned, for example, if you create a resource group, okay, you create a resource, let's say you create a storage account. In this storage account, the first thing it will ask you where you want this to be charged. You want it under as your subscription one or
Yeah.
any other subscription,
Okay.
because by default we have only one subscription, it will get automatically selected.
Of course. Of course.
Otherwise, if you have multiple subscription, you have to drop down and select that,
Okay.
and then create a, kind of resource group for them, and then create a resource.
Mm.
Okay, now if you see here, under subscription you will find all its resource groups which are associated with it.
Yeah.
See your company name, your demo RG, lab and network watcher, sales RG, all those things.
Okay.
And under resources, you will find all the resources which are tagged to this subscription.
Mm.
Okay.
I know what you mean. Yeah. I was gonna ask. So, what would the purpose be for? Of course, why don't you just add all, let's just say, departments to one subscription? If that makes sense. What's the purpose of subscription? Just to allocate a budget, or how would it? What would the purpose be?
The purpose is to have separate invoices. For example, if I get a monthly bill, okay, if you see here, each
Uh,
subscription will only get a single invoice. Okay.
okay, I know what you mean.
So if you see, there is a single invoice for whole subscription. It doesn't
For one
matter
subscription.
you have, any departments in it. Let's
Yeah,
say your company has, let's say 30, 40 departments, and they are working on different things, different technologies,
yeah,
and you don't want to, mix up their budgets, because some budgets are funded from outside, some budgets are internally funded. So
yeah,
invoices need to be submitted to the stakeholders,
yeah.
invoices required for, government compliance, for all those kind of stuffs. So in
Mm,
that way you basically choose multiple subscription.
mm,
So it all depends on how your organization want to use it. So Azure give you flexibility to use and, basically use and pay pay for what you are using as per your requirement. See, if you want to be pay as an overall a single bill, they will give you a flexibility to do that. If you want your bill to be, divided into multiple invoices, they are
yeah,
also happy to do that. Even you have a single payment method, it doesn't matter. For
yeah.
example, if I have used my own credit card to, purchase this subscription, I can basically, use the same credit card to take 100 subscriptions as well.
Okay, makes sense.
So it doesn't matter to them. The only thing is you should have a subscription, then only you can basically launch a product. Otherwise, it will not allow you to do it.
Understand.
Another thing here is, if you see, if you're creating your account for the first time, let's say you have an email ID and you are creating it for the first time, then you will get an opportunity to use its free tier as well.
Yeah,
S-
you already used, I think.
yeah, that is already being used way long back.
So free trial would be everything would be have access for like a certain period of time, like a month or something.
Yeah, for 30
Yeah.
days all the services will have full access, and you will get a credit of probably three $400. Now you can't use that services, that credit, for production purposes. For example, They have some terms and conditions that you can't, launch a website on that and try to,
Yeah, make money.
sell, make money out of it. They just
Hmm.
want you to
Play
uh,
around, test.
play around it, test it, use it, see how, take a look and feel of it. They have not making any kind of restrictions on it. They just want you to comply by it. That's it. They will
Okay.
not, check anything, or they just trust you for 30 days that you will not use it for production purposes, for resale purposes, and all those kind of stuffs.
Mm.
So that's the reason they gave you some credit as well.
Okay, I understand.
But as those credit got expired, you have to move to pay as you go or any other service.
Okay.
Now, if you see, the last thing is management groups. So what is management
Manage.
groups? So management groups are basically nothing, is as its name derived. These are logical grouping of subscription to manage them better. For example, you set a policy for these two departments, sales and training. You set a policy that their monthly expenditure should not go beyond $500. Okay,
Okay.
you create a policy from it, you assign that policy to that management group. Okay,
Yeah.
and that management group consists of these two subscription. So
Yeah.
this way you have set restriction on those subscription. Let me give you another example.
Mm.
Have you ever worked on any kind of sandbox, any sandbox environments?
Nope.
Hmm, have
Sandbox. Okay. No. No.
sandbox environment? No. Have you worked on any limited trial period of any online gaming?
Online gaming. Limited trial, like
Yeah,
30-day trial or something.
30-day trial, 40-day trials.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So in those 30-day, 40-day trials, you will get a game at a full load, but there are certain limits which you can't do. Correct?
Yeah.
So, for example, in Zoom meeting, in free trial, you can only host meeting up to 40 minutes. Correct?
Yeah.
So this way, if you see, they have set a policy on that thing that you can't go beyond that.
Yeah.
So there is restriction on that. Same way, Azure give you flexibility to, use, create a kind of management group and assign policy on those management group to manage your things accordingly.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Mr. Sajid, to shed to shed a bit of light, so you can understand. Basically, what you are able to do is literally manage the subscription in a much wider term, just like the example that you've used in the gaming. When someone signs up to a trial version, is only allowed to have access to certain things or have limitations on it.
Yeah. So let's say you have 10 subscriptions. For
Yeah.
example, you have 10 subscription. In that 10 subscription, you basically set a management group for 3 subscription where
Yeah.
you have set a policy that people in this subscription should not be able to launch any machine learning services, because machine
Okay.
learning services are way more costly and
Yeah.
it requires special permission. And
Okay.
machine learning services or any highly paid services should only be launched under subscription one, because these two subscription doesn't
They
have
don't need.
much capacity or
Yeah.
doesn't have much budget allocated to them. So
Or
even
the.
by
Yeah.
mistake it should not happen.
Yeah.
So there is something called, let me show you, something called policy. That is a different topic. You can define your own policies here. Okay,
Yeah.
you can assign it to scope. Scope means to which particular, group,
Multiple.
to particular management group here as well. See, you can set
Yeah.
it to, so this way you can use these management groups for assigning policies.
Okay.
And this policy is like a separate kind of topic where it
Yeah.
will, have compliance management, vulnerability management, everything So the policy you set here, you define a policy as per your rules. You can set it to any scope. If you see the scope here, you can set it to a management group
Yeah.
and you can add those management group into certain subscription, certain, you can
Yeah.
say, resource group, all those things.
Quick
Yeah.
question. You see the VMware when
Yeah,
you are discussing policy, like can you restrict the policies, for example, in a VMware that someone cannot access it from different times. Let's just say the start of being able to use a VMware in one subscription would be 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So when employees are, for example, on the sales, if they come under that subscription, they can only
no.
use it at that time.
See, these policies are for Azure environments. These are not for, control outside Azure communication. If you want to apply those kind of controls on a virtual machine, you have to implement that particular group policies inside that VM, so that that VM will basically disable the outbound connectivity for such a longer period of time. After that time, that outbound connectivity get enabled. You can also achieve that using logical end groups, where you can you know configured a step functions where it will disable that connectivity for certain time and then re-enable it on a Monday. For example, if you want to shut down your computer on Friday evening so that on Saturday, Sunday you save some money, you can set automation out of it, logical web apps or kind of automation step function where it will perform for you automatically.
Okay,
The
because
policy.
the way I'm looking at it is, and I'm not asking these questions so you can understand. I mean, I've done the 900 and 104 and 303 and 304 myself. So,
Mhm.
uh, because obviously the as part of being an Azure expert, you might have to at some point manage the budgets and being extremely careful with that because uh, if you don't tweak it in the way that
Yeah,
you use, you can end up. I know examples of people running up huge bills just because
yeah,
they didn't do their work properly.
correct.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
correct. So in that way, you can, for example, you can auto start it, auto shut down it as per your schedule as well. You can even, tweak it to, very fine grain level as well. For example, let's say you have a VM, okay? You want that VM to be only accessible for UK users. You don't want that VM to be accessible outside UK or some particular. In that way, you can set inbound rules to be allowed for certain VNet. The same way you can configure the firewall.
Mm. I was gonna ask, what is a VNet exactly?
VNet is virtual network.
Ah, okay, I
You
know.
have a
Okay.
network, a main
Yeah.
big network. You have VNet here, and then
Mm.
it has subnet, just like you have normal subnet
Okay, I
in
know
a
what you mean.
router and switches.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Y- y-
Um, Boy, I was gonna ask, yeah, just could you give me some examples of just in general how would you apply this hierarchy, if that makes sense? So you start off from the bottom, from resources all the way to the subscription,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
So now, if you see here,
Like
let's
a real
say,
life company or something.
yeah, let's say you have a company, okay?
Mm,
Hmm, just a minute. You have a company here, okay? That company have, three departments, okay?
mm,
One is production,
yeah,
one is
HR.
sales, and
Mm,
then is HR and training, okay?
okay.
Now, you as in a company owner, you have allocated $10,000 for production because production is a profitable business. If
Yeah,
you spend 10,000, you will get 20 or $30,000 out of it.
yeah.
For sales, you allocated $5,000
Would that be a monthly fee?
monthly fee, monthly
Okay,
budget, and then
okay,
for training and HR, you are spending $3,000. Okay.
okay.
Now imagine you have, now you as a solution architect, you have to define the policy out of it. Now there are two ways to do it.
Yeah,
For example, if there is no compliance constraint here in terms of invoicing, in terms of different payment method, you simply go ahead and purchase a single subscription and create multiple group out of it. Okay, and then
Okay.
allocate a budget accordingly and monitor it using alerts and basically, you know, notification action groups, all those
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But if there is requirement of separate invoices, separate payment methods, you basically take three subscription. Okay,
Okay.
and because you have three different payment methods, each payment methods is a prepaid payment method being sent to you by your owner, like $10,000 recharge here, 5,000
Yeah.
here, and 3,000 here. So they will
Okay.
take three different subscription, and then they will launch under a resource group, separate resource group for them, for their own subscription, and then from there they launch their resources. Now if you
Okay.
see
That's fine.
here, you can set the policies, you can control it through, you know, subscription as well, through billing as well. Anywhere you can set the policies that the bill of this subscription of this resource group should not go beyond this. If I show you here under subscription, so now if you have a budgets here. Okay, now if you see, you can add a new budget, you can filter it by, you know, your resource id, your resource type, your resource group name. For example, if you have a resource group name, let's say add filter, you have a single resource billing period. Now it should be, mm, okay, I think billing is not being set, so hold on. If you see here, I can change the scope here to, yeah, I can set the, you know, whatever
Okay. Resource group.
resource group I have, I select it. Let's say I have a lab environment resource group. Okay,
Yeah.
now under that resource group I can set my budgets. See, the scope is lab environment. Okay,
Mm.
now I can set it for, you know, any test budget.
Yeah.
I can, you know, set as an invoice or monthly, for quarterly, yearly. I can set my creation date. I can set the amount as well. Okay,
Yeah.
as soon as I set it, for example, let's say I set it for this one, it will alert me. See, actual, if 80% of budget is being used, I can, you know, create action group out of it. For example, I wanted to, you know, basically email me. Under action group I can ask them to either email me any notification I required, any action I can also put an, you know, to stop that particular resource group, to delete it, anything I want. So this way you can manage the cost here as well under subscription.
Mm.
But there is, you know, a kind of operation overhead if you have, you know, a single subscription, and you have, you know, kept everything under single subscription, different departments, different budgets. So that's why came multiple subscription option. So rather than, you know, allocating budget to there and creating this, you can say, budget alerts, you can choose a single subscription and set it whole subscription wise.
Okay.
So this way you can easily manage it. So it all depends on how that company required it to be used.
Okay.
So if you see, as in my experience, uh, I worked with different, you know, organization. Most of the people use separate subscription for each department, but they also want a separate account for each department. Understood? For example,
Separate
if,
Azure account or
yeah,
yeah.
So
Okay.
if you see here, they create multiple email IDs. Okay,
Yeah.
they create email ID that sales dot azure dot something at the rate fasttrackacademy.com. Then
Yeah.
they create hr dot training azure dot at the rate fasttrackacademy.com. So rather than they use single account, they basically choose multiple account here.
So multiple account for each department
Yeah,
and
each
one
department
subscription part. Okay.
per account. In this way, so that they can also basically segregate the administration part as well. For example,
Mm.
they have three administrator and they want those three administrator to manage each account separately.
Okay.
So
So
if
in
you
your
ask me
case,
what is the benefit of that,
yeah, yeah.
there is a one thing here, let me show you.